What's up? In 2015, I quit my job of 2 years. After 2 years of working there, technically I made less than what I did starting out, because I started out at 10 an hour. Anyways, 2 years later, I'm making $10.50 an hour, but I'm on salary. So it evened out. I possibly even made less, but anyways, that was in 2015. The reason why I stayed at that job was because I thought, well, I'll just hold it out long term. Over time, I'll prove my value, show them that I have a good work ethic. And so, it was a Monday through Friday warehouse job. And so, it took me years to find a job like that. Like, I'm dead ass. Like, I looked for, nobody would hire me. Like, nobody in those places like that with a Monday through Friday, because I was looking for something like that was more consistent with my circumstances and stuff like that. And I needed a set schedule to keep my mind clear. And I was looking for something like that to just have some order and discipline, some consistency. So I figured if I clocked out every day, that means I have like an extra 3 or 4 hours in the evening to work on certain things. I can map out and plan out my whole plan, as opposed to and I also thought it would end up paying more than if I stuck with like some like for example, I used to work at Chick-fil-A, and as with fast food and retail stuff like that, they have different schedules and all, and back then also fast food and stuff, I just assumed that it still paid minimum wage, as opposed to warehouses, which would pay $1 or $2 more. Especially in the early 2000s, like a warehouse or something would start you off at 9 or 10 an hour, and fast food and retail would be like $7.50 an hour. So it kind of changed over the years, but I guess they needed to try to keep people working in those environments, and so they were like kind of forced to have to pay people more to incentivize people to work. But I quit that job in 2015 because I wasn't getting anywhere, and I couldn't see my son. My son was being used as a control tactic. Like, my son himself was being used as a means to control me and my behavior. So my son's mom lied, basically won over custody, and then moved 8 hours away, and she and her dad kept it all a secret, pretending that she lived with her dad, while in reality she lived up 8 hours away. So every other week I would pick up my son, and her father was this very maniacal kind of like he needed to control people, right? He had this pathology where he wanted to be control over everyone and their dominion, and absorb them into his domain. Genuinely sick, like psychologically an effed person, right? So when I got with my son's mom, he told me that when I got with her, I got married to her, okay? And I got married based on the government marriage, like marriage, which is not real marriage in my opinion. It's just a contract you sign with the state, and they just call it marriage, right? But anyways, I believe marriage is a spiritual thing, not the government contract thing that you do, which never existed in all humankind. But anyways, and personally, I never planned to get married at all, ever. But through government contracts, or like I'm not looking for a long-term partner. I'm not looking to have a life where I'm married to a long-term partner and I'm gonna settle down with the right person. I'm not into all that. I want to be free, and my philosophy is, hey, you're welcome to come be in my life as I'm doing my thing, or you're welcome to kick rocks. I don't care, but I'm not signing any papers with knowing that the system is already tilted against me, and it can be used as a means of leverage to not just control my life, but to completely and utterly keep me in a constant, perpetual state of poverty. No. If that, right? Try not to curse, because this platform will not let you be seen as much if you use foul language. But yeah, this dude, when I got married, he goes, well, now you're part of the family. What? Wait, what? You got to read into these subtleties with people. When they say certain things, it gives insight on how they're thinking and what they think, how they think, and that said it all right there. That was, in his mind, he's seen someone that now he gets to utilize. He has a tool in his arsenal, so it's his son-in-law. So therefore, if he has tasks around his house that he needs to get done, he has somebody to call up now. That's what he's thinking in his head, like, I'm part of the family now. Like, and the way it really should work is like, no, you have your own family now, and the daughter is married off. Even when marriage was, like, back in the day, marriage was not this romantic thing and my lifelong partner. It was a business. Women were property back in the day, and that's how it worked, and so anyways, this dude, the grandpa, thought that I was going to be now his, and here's another thing. Where did we meet? We met at church. So because we met at church, and I had kind of like a church boy type of demeanor, passive, not passive, but like, I don't know how to explain it, but you get seen through that filter as a good old church boy. They knew that I didn't do drugs. They knew that I didn't smoke and all that stuff. So there's that filter right there. The guy that's at church that doesn't smoke or do drugs, he's perfect for my daughter. And in her eyes, he's perfect for me, because now I am seen as this utility that they can control. What they did not comprehend was that I was not that at all. I was not some church boy that lived a coddled life, that got was all, holding my Bible and blah, 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 but I mean, I'm not going to say the church softened me, but through attempting to adhere to my beliefs, it does present a more passive, I hate talking about church, to be honest with you. I hate hearing the name Jesus. I hate hearing about Jesus Christ. I hate, but it's just stuck in my face where I always have to hear about it. Like, no matter what, there's always, like, if I'm at somebody's house and I see that they've got a plaque that says John 3:16, it's not going to bother me, right? But just, I don't care if Jesus was a good person and had all these cool ideas. It's just like, I hate talking about it. I have such bad memories in retrospect connected to me trying to be a Christian, especially when you're trying to be a Christian and watching, like, nobody's into it. Everybody's just wearing it as a social label. Hey, I'm a Christian too. Oh, do you believe in the Lord? Yeah. Did you get saved? Yeah, I got saved when I was like 12, and and I really meant, and now you're part of the club. But none of these people actually live it. Like, they all nod their head and be like, oh yeah, do you love the Lord? Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I love the Lord. You gotta love the Lord, and you gotta, hey, let's say the blessing before we eat. Oh, in Jesus' name, amen. It's just a cultural label sticker that you get to wear that identifies you with the tribe. And almost, I couldn't even convince anybody to actually go out and be a Christian. And when you're a Baptist or a Pentecostal, you're supposed to go out and preach the gospel. You're supposed to go out and do ministry. None of them. And then when you try to convince them to, they look you over with the glazed eyes and be like, yeah, we should do that. That'd be a good thing. People definitely need the Lord. And that's the extent of it. But they're the real Christians, and Billy's just the weird guy, right? So, it is so stupid. Such a stupid belief system. It's a Southern thing. It's just what Southern people do, and anyways, so they met me at church. I met her at church, and ended up being not just like a bad person that you go and get a divorce from later on, 4 years later. Not just, oh yeah, it's a hectic divorce, yeah, it happens, but it's a bad divorce, but hey, you divorce and then you move on, get past it. No, it became worse than a living nightmare. I was already poor, trying to come out of poverty, and I was already poor trying to come out of poverty. So when they came along, it was like both her and her dad. It's like you're effectively, you have this Christian identity you're supposed to live up to. So you better be that church boy. You better be the husband. It's her mentality is like, you're the husband. You have all these responsibilities to be the husband that you're supposed to be. And then the dad is like, to some extent, he thinks that I'm supposed to be like his son-in-law, and now I'm part of his little, and what they didn't know is that I'm a defiant MFer. Like, I do not take crap from people at all, but they thought I was just a passive Christian dude. And so that's why churches are a horrible place to meet people. You don't want to meet especially single mothers at a church. This is a horrible, no, you don't want that. It's where the most dysfunction. Well, Billy, but that's the most dysfunctional people are the ones that need Jesus, and they're going to be at the church. But okay, good, go help them out. I'm not being part of it. I don't give a crap if I don't give a crap. I'm not going to become part of a dysfunctional person's life deliberately and consciously and be like, oh yeah, and let me live for the Lord, and the Lord will change them, and you pray for them. That's codependency. They rationalize codependency, like they rationalize it and make codependency sound like a good thing, like being codependent is a good thing, when it's like it's a horrible thing, right? But anyways, so he thought he could control me, so he would punish me. So if he would say something to disrespect me, he would try to have conversations with me. When I would go, since my son was actually living with him and I didn't even have any more money for an attorney to do anything about this legally at the time, like I had no other choice but to go clock in at my job, clock out, and every 2 weeks go pick up my son. But the grandpa would be out there attempting to make maneuvers to control me, right? Before I could pick up my son, he would try to have a conversation with me and try to disrespect me all the time. And as I began catching on to their little scheme, it got worse and worse. And so my son was being used as a tool between me and him having the need to try to control me. So once I started catching on that Mama didn't really live there, things got even more heated. So I would clock out at 5 o'clock, and on my way home, I'll clock out on my good job that has 85 locations, 401k, health insurance, and the works, the good job, and I'm still living out of a freaking truck at night. And every 2 twice a month we would get paid. Toward the end of that, right before the pay period, I would have no money left over, and so I would have to sleep in the company parking lot at night because I didn't have the gas money to drive back and forth home. So I had to have to sleep in the parking lot. Well, I didn't have a home, so back to my wherever I would park. So I would park in the parking lot and sleep in the parking lot. And then the next day my check would come in and I'd be able to get the money, and then I'd start the whole for 2 years. Well, that 1 year that I lived with the girl that I met, out of those 2 years. So, but for the most part, for a good large portion, it wasn't a full year that I lived with that girl. So most of the time, because then I did eventually rent a room from someone in a trailer. Like a Mexican girl I used to know is actually a girl I used to date, actually. Anyways, so, but we didn't like hook up or anything like that. I literally just rented a room from her. But, for a brief time. So, if everything works the way it does, my job should have been giving me raises, and I should be living. I should have enough to afford a room. I've never had enough to afford a room. I should have enough to afford a room. I should be able to go clock in, do my 8 hours, or however many hours, do my 40 hours, right? Or 40 plus hours. Clock out and have a place to go to. There should be enough revenue or income coming in from the paycheck so that I could go have like a bed, a place to shower, a place to put my food, a place to cook my food. So if jobs are meant for that, if the jobs are meant for that, then how come the good job with 401k and benefits, how come it didn't serve that purpose? And everybody's all like, look for a better job. That was the better job. I spent years looking for a position in a place like that because I thought that if I got into a place that was more functional, and in a sense it was actually. I was looking for a place like that. In a sense, it was more functional. I don't normally eat breakfast, but I think I might have some breakfast today. I might. Anyways, so in a sense, that job was more functional. Because I was looking for an environment where all these threads that I'm like, first of all these threads that I'm on, where I keep jumping from topic to topic, I'm trying to bring them all full circle and close the loop. So if you bear with me, if you just bear with me for a little bit. Anyways, I had to move my customer for today because I'm too busy. I'm trying to catch up with stuff, and so my customer for today, I asked him could I come Saturday because I still have a job to finish. I took my son to school. Just got back from taking him to school. And I have work. Part of my agreement here where I work is also doing landscaping work on the property, and I have to finish up some stuff here. So before I can. So he was cool with that. Anyways, so and I'm fortunate to have a spot to stay. I'm actually gonna look for another place, another similar like thing, and I may even do it in another city. Like maybe I can try to post some ads or something and try to get people to see if I can find another living arrangement where I can do gardening. Like I can be your living gardener, Anyways, so So the job should have paid enough to live on, because that's the purpose of a job, right? But anyways, getting back to my son's grandpa, I would get off at 5 o'clock, typically, usually, on a Friday, on the every other weekend that I would go pick up my son. And so he once I started catching on to him that mama didn't actually live there, and my son was too like young to be able to tell me that she don't live there, I guess. Once I started catching on to that, I started bringing it up, and then so I could clock out of my job and be there between 10 and 12 minutes, and I'm supposed to pick him up at 6, so that means I would get him at 5:15, 45 minutes earlier. So what his grandpa started doing as a form of punishment is he now demanded that I'm not allowed to be on his property until the exact court-ordered moment to pick up my son, which meant I had to waste a good 40 minutes of time and go sit at the local grocery store for 40 minutes before I was allowed. So this is what I mean by they had this pathological need to exert control. And dude, I called the cops on myself one time. I called the sheriff's department because I was about to knock the living F out of that old man. I was about to just beat him down. But luckily, I'm not just intelligent, but I'm also very being street smart. Let me tell you about being street smart. A lot of people might think that being street smart is like, a lot of people might think that being street smart is just like, like being able to fight and stuff, but in reality, street smart is restraining yourself in the long term so that you don't have to fight. Street smart is thinking several steps ahead because you understand the behavior of the people that you're dealing with. So I had to think ahead, like if I beat him, then I would go to jail, right? Maybe even for a while, right? If I were to beat him. And when the sheriff got there, he said, like, if you were to have beat him, and like if I got a call and you had beat him with a 2x4, this is what he told me, you would be going to jail. And so, and I thought about that. I knew he was right, but I mean, I already knew this all, but I don't know why I called the cops on myself like that. I called them and I was like, I guess I was I knew my limit. I knew I potentially had reached my limit. And so I was like, the safest thing for me is to call the cops, and tell them what's going on, because so basically Grandpa wanted to punish me by making me wait. So I could have picked up my son at 5:15, but now I had to pick him up at 6 on the dot because that's the court order. And I would give him the child support check. Since Mama wasn't there, I would write my check out and get my money order. I did money orders. I would write it and I would give it to him. And then so this was all about control, right? But anyways, in the long term, I had to think about my son. Like, okay, will this damage my ability to be a father even more if I go to jail for beating somebody up? Yes, it would. Later on, perhaps, let's say, because we had court just 2 years ago, right? That they drugged me into. That had nothing to do with me, right? His mom got into some trouble, and so we had to be part of her shenanigans, because she, to this day, continues to constantly. There's a DSS case open on her right now, and she just went to court 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? And there's currently a case open on her right now, right? So, and it's always been that way her entire whole life. Even when she was growing up with her dad, there was DSS involved in her family. So she continues the pattern, continues the curse, the pattern, the lifestyle of constantly having the authorities in her life. And she's highly dysfunctional. And so once I got out of from being with her, anytime I've ever gotten involved with a girl where I seen where she was becoming dysfunctional, I've always exited that, especially after I separated from her. Any sign of dysfunction, because of how I grew up, I was like, I am not going to be this way. I do not want to be this way and live like this, right? You got to understand, I did not just go into the world, into life blindly and being like, I ain't going to be like how I grew up, and then just start date whoever and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know how to explain this. It was my life mission to not be how I grew up. It was my life purpose and life mission to never be poor. That was like the main driver, to never be poor, to be able to never be poor, to actually have a good life and get away from how I grew up and to never be poor. That was like my prime functions. Like every time I'd clock in at a job, the whole purpose was to get out of poverty, to work hard to get out of poverty, to work hard. Every time I'd work multiple jobs, every time I'd work overtime and long hours, like at the theme park I worked at, that sits on the border of North and South Carolina. When I worked there, I would work 10-hour days. I'd work just enough hours to where I would still have time that evening to go mow this huge property I used to mow it in the evenings. So it was a large property, and sometimes I did not have the time to do a full day at the property. So I asked the lady, could I come in the evenings and just work on different parts of it throughout the week? And she agreed to that. And so now there was other times I would spend the whole day mowing, just depending on the situation, because I was also cleaning windows. And then this other big yard I did every 2 weeks. I would do that yard. I'd mow it with my push mower. And so and then, I was cleaning windows. I had someone I grew up around his dad, he grew up like in a middle class neighborhood, and his dad helped finance him starting a cleaning business. And so he would do cleaning at night, and because he was already a second shift kind of guy, he just preferred second shift, and so his cleaning business was perfect for his desire to start a cleaning business at night. And so his dad helped him invest in a franchise called Jam Pro. It's a franchise, a business. It's just a business. And then technically he could have just started his own business, like instead of using the franchise, and and got his own logo printed up and got his own shirts, and he could have done that all himself. But in my opinion, he probably didn't know how businesses worked, since most people don't. And so when this opportunity for a franchise came up, he saw it as this like novel thing. I'm not saying he did see it this way. I'm just saying most likely, since most people don't know how reality works, he probably seen it that way and saw, oh wow, it's just like, so this company is a franchise, and so it's going to allow me to use their brand, and then now I can, like, the authorities are going to let me to, like, this is an authority, and it's going to allow me to use their name and likeness to to do cleaning, and I can be my own boss and make money. Gee, I'm not saying that that's his thought process, but I'm just pointing out how people are ignorant to how reality works. And I don't mean that in a diminutive manner. I'm just saying, when I say people are ignorant to how reality works, all I'm saying is that we're not taught that businesses should be just talking about business should just be as common as talking about everyday to day life. But if everyone did talk like that, then a lot of more people would start businesses. So the business owners, as long as everyone remains ignorant to how the reality actually works, then they benefit. They benefit off of you being an employee and clocking in and doing it the right way. And that's why all these tropes, that's why all of these sayings about, not everybody can start a business, and business is risky, and you're going to pay lots of taxes, or what else? What's some of the other common sayings? Business is risky, and most businesses fail. Only X amount of businesses work. So all those beliefs, all those ideas are perpetuated in the society, because as long as they can keep us ignorant to how reality works, then we won't attempt to pursue our own thing. Anyways, getting back on point, looking for some ingredients. I have found the ingredients. All right, so anyways, getting back on point. So I'm working at night for him often. He'll have like different jobs. I worked for him for like 2 years. In the evening, I vacuumed this warehouse. Or it wasn't a warehouse. It was artists for textiles, where they come up with design concepts, and they would hold on. So the artists would come up with the design concepts at this business, and for textiles, and then like for Disney and different other businesses and stuff, right? And they would come up with the designs and patterns. So anyways, I was there every night for 2 years vacuuming, and I guess I'm kind of like starting to trail off path with all the useless details, but so I'll get back on point now. So I worked all those jobs, and I forgot my point. Hold on. And yeah, so my goal was to get out of poverty. That was my prime goal in life, was to exit the state of poverty. And that's why I worked all the jobs. And I keep forgetting like where I threaded off, but the grandpa was very controlling, attempting to control, like it gave him a sense of power because I stood up to him, and he resented that. There was times I had to, since I wasn't he had no power in his life, and he let the women in his life run all over him, including his daughter and his wife. They would steal his stuff, and he would gripe and complain to me about it. And at some point I knew I was in a really bad situation. Not just a really bad situation, but I was also like, I was not just in a bad situation. I was in a horrible situation where a nightmare, because I didn't have, you got to think, I had a kid and I didn't have any place to go. Like, I didn't have any parents to go to, or no family or no friends that I could say, hey, can I come live here for a while? Can I pay you something to come live here? And stuff like that. so I had to get out of that environment, right, to the best of my ability. Um, so they would attempt to control me because I didn't, because they seen in me what they didn't have. Like they seen that I had balls. Like I was going to stand up for myself. Like I wasn't going to let people mess with me. I wasn't going to let them mess with me. And so they resented that. And these were powerless people that had to use and exert control over others, uh, because they needed power in their own lives. And so they saw me as an easy target because I was appeared to be like a good Christian young man, right? I could be uh, so she was a single mom already. She already had a daughter. So she was looking for the nice Christian guy to take care of her offspring that she had with another dude. And the dad seen me as a utility that he could use for his own personal gain, since I was this meek and mild church boy in his mind. And so, but since I wasn't that, and I did not meet their expectations, and they seen in reality I was actually a really strong person, that put fuel to the fire. That made them to have to self-reflect even more. Like, so she would go around telling people that I didn't want to work and that I quit my jobs and that I was just like a deadbeat. Because eventually it got to the point where I was forced to leave. If I didn't leave, I would have ended up like with a domestic violence. She tried to set me up several times to hit her. She tried to set me up several times to try uh, to hit her, to set me up to anything. So, and I knew that if I left that situation, that her first attack would be to go around saying that I was a deadbeat who left his family. But I had two choices: either get a domestic violence on my record. Somebody's calling me from a number I don't recognize, but it's local. I feel like I should take it. Maybe I should and then upload. Well, they hung up. So I had two choices: get a domestic violence on my record, or uh, be accused of being a deadbeat, right? And that left his family. So I chose the latter, even though it wasn't true. I just had to choose the best of two worst options, because I knew that the authorities and people and the church would believe her. Obviously she's the woman, she's the poor single mom and just wants to do right for her kids, and I'm just she had my entire church convinced that behind the scenes she had them all convinced I was this abusive dude, and they all believed her. Everyone in the church, everyone just took whatever she said at face value, and behind the scenes, all of those people at church putting on a nice smile on their face, like in front of me, behind the scenes, they all believed that I was being abusive and that I was violent and that I was controlling. And then eventually I met the pastor at Starbucks one day, and I was talking to him, and we had the conversation. And I went to physically meet with him. I went to the church to meet with him. I don't remember why, but I went to go meet him, and we had the discussion, and he told me that she had, and I told him everything about her. At one point, she made the news. She shoplifted with my son with her, passed out in a bathroom, and she made the local news, Charlotte, North Carolina, which is pretty big. And and I don't even live in Charlotte. So she made the big news, the big local news by her name and face plastered over the Channel 9 News in Charlotte, and and I was out of town working, and so anyways, the job, none of the jobs that I worked helped me to get out of poverty at all. None of them. I never arrived at a point where any of the money. It's so stupid simple. People, none of the jobs made me enough money to live on. So none of the jobs paid enough, and that warehouse job. So it's 2015. So I'm leaving. I'm finally fed up for the very last time. Like, in my mind, this is the last time I'm ever working for anybody. I'm in this endless cycle of homelessness, and I get to see my son, but only if I'm compliant with the demands of the dysfunctional family who are using my son as a control tool to control me for their own personal power. And because if she actually intended on raising my son, she could have easily just taken care of him, but she had no desire to raise my son. She only had the desire to get custody and to have that power over me. That was her only motive in getting custody, because she nearly instantaneously moved away 8 hours away to DC, and I'm in the Carolinas, right? And so what happens next is I quit my job at this place, this warehouse, and I decide I'm going to work for myself. I'm no longer the crap things that they did at this job. I thought it was finally the job. Getting back to the other points, people have always told me, well, look for a better job. Well, just look for a better job. If that job isn't paying enough, look for a better job. And so for 20 years, I looked for a better job. And I finally found this job because, again, it was Monday through Friday, warehouse, 85 locations and expanding. It was automotive paint. They sold automotive industrial applications, industrial paint, basically, an automotive paint. Body shops were their main customer, it seemed like, but they had other customers in other industries too. And so this is the company, right? This is the better job. So it took me 20 years to get to that point. No, 18 years to get to that point, right? Where I finally found that job. So it took me 18 years to get there. And I stuck with it because I thought, okay, I'm finally here. And at this job, it was a bunch of privileged people that already had life on easy mode. Because they would reminisce about their life and how it went, and I'd get to listen to them talking about their life experiences and the things that they've been through, and all the wild days and all the stuff, and and everything that everybody experiences in their youth, and the drugs and the partying, and most of these people are just like preppy dudes. And more, it wasn't one of the warehouses where you got a bunch of ghetto people trying to act thug and be like, man, shit, man, why am I even in? Man, I'm tired of this shit. It wasn't one of those places where everybody's being babysat, right? Because, and you got to understand, I looked for 20 years for the better job, right? So, it was finally just like, it was finally like people just clock in, come to work, they do their jobs, they run the systems. And even at first, the warehouse manager, I was cool with him. It was like the best dude I ever worked with in a warehouse setting, and it was like the best circumstances. I thought I'd found myself in the right place finally, right? I thought, wow, this is the place. This is the good place that I've been looking for. Plus, they got all the benefit. Nobody's trying to act gangster. Nobody's trying to. Yeah, they reminisced about their days when they used to smoke the weed, but it wasn't like a normal conversation. They weren't always talking about how, man, I can't wait this weekend. I'm going to get effed up this weekend. Yeah. None of the retarded stuff, like where everybody's trying to impress everybody. It was just like, you can probably imagine these people grew up in normal, really nice cul-de-sac neighborhoods, and they went to college, they did their thing, they have functioning parents that work, and now they ended up, what I learned is that these privileged people that grow up in privileged settings like this, though, the only downside is the human dynamic factor, or so basically they ended up lying to us, because there was the normal people sect where, in other words, what I mean by that, there was the normal people that worked at the company that I'm talking about, like they just show up and do their work, and whatnot. But what happens is there was also this guy who'd been like clean for 5 years off of doing meth for 5. He had been like 5 years clean or something, 2 to 5 years clean, something like that. And he just did his job like normal, did his work truck. He drove a truck for the company and sold paint out of the truck. And then there was this girl from a small town here in the Carolinas, but you could tell she didn't have the education, she didn't have the college. So there was a clear divide. There was a clear yet unspoken socioeconomic divide, or a socioeconomic, a clear. These are the old Southern, like, poor-ish people that come from semi-backwoods, like low education aspect of the, and then there was the uppity middle class, life on easy mode. They're just maintaining the lifestyle that they grew up in and moving on. They're continuing the next chapter of their already pre-existing privileged lives, and they're just there to work, right? So there's that social dynamic where they're idealistically we're all equal. We all just are operating the company, but in reality, there's also a power dynamic and there's a socioeconomic dynamic where the people that are in a better situation, eventually it bleeds out. The contrast, it's kind of an unspoken thing. And so in those situations, they're going to exert power. They're going to exert social dominance. They have more leverage in life in general. They have more leverage at the job. They're maintaining the life that they were handed, so they're going to exert that power over the ones that are there out of necessity, and they might suffer if they have to quit, right? They might suffer more if they have to quit. And then the other ones, like if they were forced to quit or got fired, they would virtually suffer no consequences, right? So anyways, they began to lie. They began to really lie, and it was just horrible. It became really, really a bad place to work at after near the end of the 2-year mark that I was working there. The last 3-4 months before I left there, it became a horrible place to work at, as they were clearly lying, but I understood that they were lying. My other coworkers didn't understand that these people were lying, right? They were just lying to us, right? And me being street smart, I could pick up on this because some of the people there were getting their hopes up. And after these privileged dudes just blatantly just lied about where we were heading in the company, and I can make another video about that. I may have already made a video about that a long time ago, but this will be 10 years ago this year. Anyways, so I left and I said, you know what? Eventually I put in my notice. I said, I will never work for anybody ever again. And that was the last time I really worked for somebody really long-termish for somebody else. Since then, I have taken positions at businesses. Since then, in 10 years, the longest I worked for somebody else was 90 days. And it was a janitor position. But I had a reason why I took that position. It was a low janitor position at a factory, at a large factory with, a multi-million-dollar company. And I'm in that factory, and this is another story, but eventually the dudes there, just like the childish, infantile people they are at most jobs when you work for other men, they were acting a lot of them were the wannabe gangster acting people. And they started asking me, could I fight? Do I think I could fight so-and-so? They started instigating, basically, just like in middle school. And anyways, the paint warehouse was just, it seemed like the most normal place that I had ever worked at, aside from a lawnmower repair shop and the concrete, the Porta-John business, which was owned by a guy that had a concrete business, right? And it was his part-time business. So I left eventually in 2015. For the most part, I never worked for anybody else except for a couple times. And I never worked for anybody else except for a couple times I did. But I started going to get my own clients, and I started posting ads on Craigslist. And in the fall of 2015 and into the winter, but I was living in another city. I moved up to where my son's mom stayed, but I didn't have any means to do anything. Really, that's a whole nother story. I had to get back with my son. I was trying to figure out a way to that's a whole nother story. I ended up going up there to where she was to get my son away from his grandpa. And so that's a whole nother story. But anyways, in 2016, once I got back down to the south, I started to post ads on Craigslist, and I got my first customer eventually. My very first customer, and I did a landscaping job. And then I started to hustle. I started to post ads. And then before COVID, I got up to where I had like 45 total customers. And through posting ads. So if you don't even have a business today, and you want to escape your job, like the quickest way to start to get an idea is to post ads on Craigslist and offer a service, right? Even if you're working full time for somebody else already, like go post some ads, offer a service, and even if you take the job or not, like somebody's going to call you and they're going to think that you're a professional, right? They're going to think, okay, I'm calling somebody. They're either going to think one or two things, that they're calling some old dude off of Craigslist that knows how to do a thing. They're going to perceive you that way. Or they're going to perceive that you are a company. But if you just talk professional to them, so when they call and they're like, hey, I got some work done. I need to spread some rocks in my bed. I need to put down some fabric, and I need my grass mowed. And you say, You say, okay, sure, I could do that. How soon are you looking to get this done? And then you ask questions. Say, how soon are you looking to get this done? And then they might say, in the next week or two. And then you say, well, how about this Saturday? If you work full time, you can say this. You can say, well, I work a full time job, and I do this on the side, and I'd be glad to come out Saturday on the 14th if that works for you. And then you go out, and then you can also say, but I can also, before we do the job, I can also go out there and meet you, and you can show me everything you want. Show me everything you want to have done, and I can hear what you have to say about it. And they might ask, well, how much do you charge? And you say, well, you can say, I charge $30 an hour, and you provide the materials and the tools, and I'll just do the labor for you. And that's a game changer, because for me, when I first made $20 an hour, I actually responded to a Craigslist ad. Up to that point, I'd never made more than $10 an hour at a job, right, for the most part. And this lady said, I need some landscaping work done on her Craigslist ad, and it said $20 an hour. I was like, this has got to be a scam, because in my mind, I couldn't comprehend, I could not even perceive the idea of making more than $10 per hour. My mind was kind of stuck in that funnel, in that locked paradigm that, of what a normal wage is, right? And so, sure enough, it wasn't a scam. I go out to the lady's house, and I'm like, she's paying me $20 an hour. And this kind of ignited the fire. This actually did happen in 2014. That first happened in 2014. That opened my mind, or 2015, and opened my mind to the idea that, hey, you know what? I don't have to earn $10 an hour and be stuck. I have the people will pay money, right? Is the mentality that I had to understand. And then a couple years ago, I did a landscaping job. I'm giving this as an example, and so we went over it, and I said, let me give you an estimate in materials. I told him how much it was probably going to cost. The guy writes me a check. This old man, he writes me a check for the materials. I used that money to go get the materials. It took me 8 days to finish the job. When I was done with the job, it came out to a total of $1,900. No, I'm sorry. It came out to $3,000. It was about a $3,000 job total that he paid, and I walked away with $1,900 out of the $3,000 job. I walked away $1,900, and that helped me cover my rent for that month, which was $1,500 a month. So eventually, you could get to a place where, with whatever kind of business that you're doing, where each week you have a new job. Now, to some people, especially people that already have businesses, this is nothing. This is like, oh, well, that's nothing. Like, I do $10,000 jobs, or $20,000, $30,000 jobs. I at a neighborhood where one of my customers is this dude I grew up with in a trailer park. He was doing tree work. He has a tree business and grading company, and I saw him out there. I was like, yo, man, what's up? And I went to talk to him and asked him how has he been doing and how's his business going. And he said, good. He was like, this is a $30,000 job right here. So basically, they call you up. They say, hey, I need trees taken down. You go up there with all your equipment. You cut down the trees safely. They pay you the $30,000. You probably need to take 30% out of that and set it aside for taxes. But let's just say most of us aren't in that situation. So let's just say that we got a $3,000 job every week. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So every week you walk away with a couple $1,000 in your pocket. Most of us are not taught how reality works. So a lot of people are in a better position than me, and they could do way better than me. I'm gonna get off of here, but I'm just saying I'm gonna keep pursuing it. I'm gonna get to the point where I live life on my own terms and then I'm free. And that should be everybody's objective, to become free. So thanks for listening.